welcome back to the Caffeine and Dopamine podcast. I'm Jose, the one and only host, neurospicy mom of two, and multi-business owner. Today, I want to talk to you about how our journey kind of got started. When my youngest was 2 years old, she had a lot of words. Short words, 2-year-olds don't usually string whole sentences together right when they turn 2, but she would say mama, papa, latte, ball, go. She knew all kinds of animal sounds. She had a pretty good amount of words for a 2-year-old. And by the time she was 2.5, even a little before 2.5, when they're that little, they still have appointments like all the time. We were at an appointment with her pediatrician, and I think I knew, but it kind of just hit me in the gut that she lost a lot of the words that she was saying. She was not communicating the way that she had been before. And this was, the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So still in like COVID protocols, the world's still changing. She had just started at daycare, I don't know, maybe 2 months before. They started in daycare in December of 2020. So lots of changes happening, and we were having issues at daycare. She wasn't able to communicate her wants and needs. They didn't know what she wanted. She was having a lot of tantrums, or so I thought at the time. So her pediatrician recommended early intervention. It was something that was recommended with my oldest. We never followed through with it. She loved attention, and even as a baby, she would stuff her fist in her mouth to get you to look at her. She still loves attention now as a 6-year-old, but we never went down that route. So I waited because I thought the doctor had to make a referral. I talked to somebody else, came to find out, well, you didn't need a referral. You can just call yourself. So I did. And we had a Zoom intake meeting. I don't think it accomplished anything. Jenny was not active during the Zoom meeting. I remember I was at home that day. We didn't have daycare, or maybe I just kept them home for the meeting. I don't remember. But we were on the floor in the living room. I had my laptop out, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She wasn't interacting because it was a computer screen. There was nobody there to physically interact with her. So they gave us a few recommendations after they got all of the paperwork together and said, you qualify. She qualifies for speech. She qualifies for OT. And we recommend behavioral if you're interested. This was all new to me. I had never done any of this before. All I knew was my daughter wasn't talking anymore, and we needed to figure out why. Crazy to me because her older sister, all kids are different, but she was talking so much, knew her ABCs, numbers, colors, all kinds of things by the time she was 2. All thanks to YouTube, no thanks to me. I didn't teach her that stuff. She learned it from YouTube. And so I said, this is a big change for our family. This is a big change for us. She's never done anything like this before. She's 2.5. So what if we just start with one person, introduce that one person, and go from there? And they said, okay, if that's what you would like to do, I recommend starting her with a behavioral therapist, and then that behavioral therapist can also try to work on her other needs as well, and then we can introduce more people as we go. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take your advice. I don't know what we're doing here. Let's do that. So that's what we did. And the behavioral therapist would go see her at daycare. So they would see her once a week at daycare. I believe it was for about an hour. I would just get a piece of paper sent home with some notes. I talked to her on the phone a couple times, but I hadn't met her. So I want to say maybe a month or so went by. I had started doing my own research at the time into autism and what that looked like, what the signs were. And I kind of came to my own conclusion that I thought Jenny was autistic. And I brought it up to my husband after I brought it up to her behavioral therapist, and her behavioral therapist actually works with a lot of autistic kids, and was like, yes, I thought that, but we're still kind of early in the process, and I didn't want to just throw that at you because I know you're going through a lot with the transitioning. So after she kind of validated my thought process, I brought it up to my husband, who was very, I don't want to say unhappy, but my husband is from Sicily, born and raised. He's been in this country for 10 years this year. So over there, there's a big stigma. They don't talk about autism. They don't talk about really any mental health or anything. I remember the first thing he said to me was, my daughter's not handicapped. I don't have a handicapped daughter. And I looked at him and I was like, I understand what you're saying. I understand you're scared. I'm scared too. But what if she is? Like, we need to explore this. So I had started doing research. I called around to try to get her a diagnosis. The one place I called had like a 4-month wait list, so we got on it. And then I ended up finding somewhere else that was actually recommended to me. I forget who recommended it, but they recommended it to me. They were outside of our insurance, but they were doing a case study. So they said, if you come in for this case study, there's no fee. We'll actually give you like a $50 gift card, but we can get you that diagnosis as well. Your doctor might not take it because we're out of network, but we can try. So we did that. It got us in like 2 or 3 months earlier than the wait list for the other place would have. But let's backstep a little bit. So the behavioral therapist had been going to see Jenny at daycare. We had an appointment scheduled for her to come to the house instead of daycare. And all the while, I had joined Facebook groups. I had been reading up online about different types of therapies, different methods that people are doing, just trying to learn as a parent and figure out the best way to support Jenny in all of these new changes and everything that was going on. So she came over to the house, and by the time she left, the first thing I said to my husband when she left my house was, that lady is never going to see our daughter again. Again, I was new. I didn't know much about behavioral therapy or ABA, applied behavior analysis. It was all new to me. But from the little that I had learned at that point, the things that she was doing were just not okay. She would play with Jenny at the daycare, which I found out later from talking to the daycare owner after we kicked the therapist to the curb. She would jump with her. Jenny loves physical stuff. She likes if you're rough with her. She has high sensory needs. I can't think of that word right now, but just physically, she likes to play rough. So she would jump, and the behavioral therapist taught her the sign for jump. But here's where the problem came in. She would play with Jenny. She would pick her up and jump her in the air, which Jenny loved. And Jenny has a phrase, even now, she still uses it, and she'll say doo-doo. And to you, that might not make sense. You're like, doo-doo? Are you talking about poop? Like, what's going on? But doo-doo to Jenny means do it again. I want to do it again. She uses it consistently. For us, that is a word in her vocabulary because she uses it the same every time. She's been using it for years. And I told the behavioral therapist that. So I was sitting there watching her, and Jenny is jumping. Jenny finishes. She wants to do it again, and she's saying doo-doo with her hands up in the air because she wants her to pick her up. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. This lady was ignoring her, and she told us that she would not acknowledge what Jenny wanted unless she did 2 of 3 things. And those 3 things were making eye contact, signing for jump, or saying jump. So if she didn't do at least 2 of those 3 things, she was ignoring her. So even though she was saying doo-doo, which was her word, and her asking, she was just ignoring her. And it just made me so mad. Now, I'm not a confrontational person. I can send a really strongly worded email or message, don't get me wrong, but in the moment, I'm not confrontational at all. That's my husband, it's not me. I didn't get that gene, I guess. I am scared. So, I didn't say anything. I sucked it all in, and then as soon as she left, I was like, no. The next day, I called our case manager. I don't know if that was her title, but I called her. I think her name was Heather. And I was like, listen, Heather, I do not want that lady at my house ever again. Like, this is what she was doing. I am not okay with it. Some people might be, but that does not fly for us. She was not validating Jenny's communication. Jenny was communicating with her and she was straight up ignoring her. That's not okay. I said, I'm changing what I said before. I don't want a behavioral therapist at all. Hard no. And at this point, I would like to start speech and occupational therapy both individually. So we did. We were assigned a speech therapist and an occupational therapist. They were coming to see Jenny at daycare, and then we would do home visits too. Same as before, except they were so much better. I was also much more vocal at this point because I learned my lesson. I was not involved. I was learning, it was all new to me, but I'm glad I figured it out when I did, and it didn't cause any long-term trauma or damage. But we started with them. And then once Jenny turns 3, she transitioned to the intermediate unit, and that's where we are now. I'm sitting in their parking lot right now while she is in her class. She goes 75 minutes a week. Unfortunately, that's all we get right now. But even still, it has been a very long journey. We're talking, it's been 2 years since we started this process. 2 years I've been fighting for services for her. Once we transitioned to the IU when she turned 3, she had her intake evaluation. I was very upfront in that. So they had a room, like a playroom, and then a little office kind of right on the side. So I was in the office and I was answering all kinds of questions, like questions about her birth, questions about what she was like now, like all kinds of questions. And then they had the therapists in the playroom playing with her with the toys and things. So at the end, everybody sat down. I'm 99% sure if I remember correctly, which I could be wrong because it's been a year and a half. But they gave me at least some recommendations at that meeting, but then they were like, we're going to sit down, go through all of our paperwork, put everything together, and then you will get the information, we'll get the IEP, and we'll let you know what her placement is before her birthday. So this was in like July because they go off of a school calendar, and then they took a break for like an entire month. So I didn't hear a word. Like, we still had early intervention at that time, but I didn't hear a word from them for like a really long time. So we ended up hearing back, and they were like, based off of how she did during her intake, she does need speech, she does qualify for speech, but at this point we are only offering occupational as support to personnel. And that meant nothing to me. I was like, I don't know what that means. I mean, honestly, to today, I still don't really know what that means. But from basically, they don't think that she needs OT to function in a classroom environment. So she is regulated enough in the classroom with them that she does not need direct occupational therapy from an educational standpoint. So the class she's in now, she gets speech direct, except it's only like 15 minutes direct a week. And then there is an OT in the classroom, but they're not technically working directly with her. It's not part of her IEP. I've been asking every meeting that we've had, I've been asking for the last year and a half, and they have not given it to her. So she goes once a week to speech and occupational therapy at a play therapy office that is unfortunately out of network for our insurance, so we are paying out of pocket. but that's because they are great at what they do. They are play-based. There is nothing behavioral. I've had countless conversations with her therapist about how against behavioral principles and behavioral practices they are. And they're wonderful, but it's frustrating that that's where we are, because I think that she needs extra services, and it's already a lot to have to pay for 2 things a week when they're only offering her 75 minutes, and they think that that's sufficient. And we had our transition meeting this week, which is a whole other thing that I will dive into in another episode. But basically, I tried to pull her from this class a couple months ago because I did not like some things that I had received on our messenger app. And I questioned what they were doing in the classroom. And they made such a big deal about, oh, if you want her to go to kindergarten next year, it's important that she stays in our classroom. And we had our transition meeting last week on Friday, and I said, she's only going 75 minutes a week. That's all you've offered her. That's all she gets. 75 minutes a week. And you want to tell me that that's preparing her for a classroom where she would be 5 days a week. Yeah. So anyways, this was kind of a tangent, but not really. Just wanted to introduce you to our journey and how it started with Jenny and what it's changed into, and it's ever growing, and how it helped me learn more about neurodiversity and not seeing autistic people and an autism diagnosis as negative as it is, which again, I will definitely get into that more in another episode, because that's also something completely in and of itself. We've had struggles with family members even now, and accepting that diagnosis and understanding it. And it's hard to understand if you don't live it every day. But yeah, so to sum it all up, thanks for listening. And on my next episode, we are going to discuss the transition meeting that we just had and what our next steps are as a family in moving forward for Jenny's education. We'll see you then.